All right, well, it is 3:01, so we're gonna begin, and if folks jump on and hop on, that's totally okay. And we can answer questions for them at the end, or they can always email us if they have additional questions and miss something. So my name is Emma Phillips. I am with C&S Companies. We're the lead project consultant for the Homer DRI. Homer is a round 6 community DRI. Our team also worked on round 5 in the city of North Tonawanda. Lissa Diaquani is on the call as well. She is our Department of State project manager for this project. So she'll also be answering questions and chiming in if anyone has a question. And then I see Gary's on the call. Gary Van Gorder from Cortland County is one of our co-chairs for the DRI. So we're all gonna should be able to answer any questions that you have pop up. But we're gonna get started. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the DRI program is, types of projects that are eligible under the program, funding levels, evaluation criteria for all the projects, the open call for project application form, and then any questions, and talking about deadlines. What is the DRI? The DRI is an economic development program that was created by New York State, led by New York State Department of State and Empire State Development, New York State Homes and Community Rule. The biggest goals of the DRI program are to transform downtown neighborhoods. They want to be a catalyst for redevelopment, job creation, and housing diversity. Homer, as I said, is part of the 6th round of funding. Homer is a DRI community, which means they receive $10 million in award. At the end, Homer, at the very, very end of this process, Homer will have $9.7 million to allocate to projects. At the end of the product, this is a strategic investment plan that shows a slate of projects that the state then chooses from. So no one from Homer chooses the projects. The consultant team does not choose the projects. New York State ultimately decides what the $9.7 million will go towards. A little bit about Homer's DRI. Homer applied just recently in 2021. They did have previous applications before that, but this is all based off of their 2021 application. The application included potential public and private projects that were catalytic for Homer's downtown. It drew upon previous outreach and planning, and projects were strictly shown to show Homer's potential. Just because a project was mentioned in their 2022 application doesn't mean that it necessarily will be included on the slate of projects or be given funding. So the application is really to show New York State, hey, we're ready for investment and within our community. Here are some ideas that we have. And now we're in the planning process of let's actually do a call for projects, see what else is out there, and then work with the community and the local planning committee to see what projects should move forward, and then New York State decides. Community, like I said, community outreach will definitely help shape which projects are included in that final strategic investment plan. Before I go into that, we are now in our 2nd month of this project. We had our first LPC meeting, local planning committee meeting, on June 1st. Our next one is July 6th. I'll have details at the end of that. We have 5 more LPC meetings after that. The project will go until December. We will be submitting the strategic investment plan in December of 2023. During the entire, rest of the process, we'll have 3 public workshops in total. We'll have 7 local planning committee meetings in total, and we'll have 2 pop-up events. We'll be talking about those more at our 2nd local planning committee meeting and also at our 1st public workshop, which I'll give you details about at the end of this. So, what are the different types of projects that are eligible under the DRI? There's public improvements, which the Village of Homer would apply for, which include streetscaping, parks, infrastructure improvements. There's private projects, which include new construction or rehabilitation of an existing building. There's branding and marketing for the community, which means just hard costs, no advertisements. That would also be submitted by the Village of Homer. And there's a small project fund. This year, for the small project fund, you must show identified projects for that fund within your strategic investment plan. Just because projects are identified in the strategic investment plan doesn't necessarily mean they will be funded. And then there's a separate RFP process if the small project fund is awarded. Small project funds look different for every community. Some communities asked for a number around 600,000. Some communities asked for less than that. It all depends on how many projects are submitted that would fit that small project fund goal. And eligible project types are continued planning, operation and maintenance for a building, pre-award costs. So anything that you may have invested into a project before this happened isn't eligible to be reimbursed. Property acquisition is not eligible to be reimbursed. Training and program expenses for a business or an entity, and then expenses for existing programs. So what type of funding is available for these different projects? Public projects are eligible for 100% reimbursement. Just because they're eligible for 100% reimbursement doesn't mean that public projects shouldn't and won't go for additional funding. The state likes to see a bunch of different funding allocated to a project and leveraging different grant sources so they know they're not just giving the full grant fund. Nonprofits are also eligible for 100% reimbursement, but like I said, leveraging other funds creates a more competitive project, and you must prove your 501c3 certification to be known as a nonprofit project. Private projects. We have two separate call for private projects under the call for projects. There's an open call for large call for projects, which the minimum cost for that would be $200,000. So if your project is $200,000 or more, you should select the normal call for projects in the project template. And then we have the open call for small call for projects, which is a maximum cost of $199,999. And in the project template, you will see there's a box that you click for small project fund. We highly suggest if your project is under 200,000, definitely going for the small project fund, because we're really focusing on larger transformative projects for over 200,000. Not saying that a smaller project isn't transformative. We just want to make that delineation clear so we have identified projects in our small project fund at the end of this. The maximum project ask, if private, is up to 40% of your total project cost. Just because you can ask for up to 40% of your total project cost doesn't necessarily mean you should. Just like with the public projects and nonprofit projects, all projects should consider leveraging other funding sources. This makes your project infinitely more competitive because you have those additional funding sources lined up. It shows that you've had investment into the project and that you're ready to go. So what are we looking for when we evaluate these projects? Does it align with state and local goals? Does it have community support? Is it catalytic, meaning does it attract other investment and positively impact its surroundings? Is it ready to be implemented in the near term? Is it one of the eligible projects that we just talked about? Is it cost effective? Meaning, does your project budget align with what our professionals on the consulting team side estimate to be the cost? And then does it have co-benefits? So not only does it benefit you as a project sponsor or the people that utilize that building, but does it benefit more than that? Does it open up some public space? Does it improve quality of life? Does it take a project off the tax rolls and into the local tax base? And does it improve a dilapidated building or building that's been, underutilized for many years? So when we talk about alignment with local goals, I'm not going to read this to you, but the Village of Homer had a vision statement in their DRI application, which is available online at the Village of Homer website. Does it align with this vision statement? And will it align with the vision statement that the consultant team works on in the near future? This vision will probably be updated to be more concise and a little bit shorter through public outreach. So we highly recommend that you make sure to attend our public workshop to see that updated vision and then follow along with our continued outreach so that your project aligns with that. So some project requirements. It must be in the DRI boundary. If it falls outside of the DRI boundary, we are very sorry about that, but our boundary has been decided upon. And so it must fall within that boundary. That boundary is included in the template form on the village's website so that you can look into that boundary and make sure that your project falls into it. If you're unsure, you can always email myself to make sure that your project is within the boundary. Project timing. Does it break ground in the near term? Project funding. Do you have secured financing commitments from non-DRI funds? This can mean a variety of things. This can mean other grant sources. It can also mean a bridge loan from your local bank. It can also mean just private equity. If you do have other sources, we highly recommend that you show us that you have those available. A letter from the bank is great, a letter from a financial advisor, or letters from other grant entities that announce how much funding you received. Project scale and size. Is it transformative? Now, every project is transformative in its own way, but the goal of the DRI is to be visibly transformative to the downtown area. So is it within that boundary, and then does it make a big change within that area? Project sponsors. You must have capable parties that have dealt with projects like this or are ready to deal with projects like this. And then building decarbonization, you must be willing to include decarbonization strategies if you're required to do that. I keep saying, do not worry about the decarbonization aspect until you have to worry about it. I'm going to be putting up the threshold numbers in a little bit so you can see for yourself if you fall into that. If you do fall into that and you do apply for a project, the consultant team is here to help you. We will set you up with someone that can help you with those decarbonization strategies. So your application form, I'm going to click onto this at the end, but I'm just going to run through everything that it asks for. We ask that you fill this out to the best of your ability. We know that not everyone will have every single one of these details done. So we just ask that you fill it out as comprehensively as you can. And then when I talk about our office hours later, we highly, highly encourage you to attend those so that we can help you beef up your application, because we want to give everyone a full chance at applying for a project. We will need to know project sponsor with all of your contact information. So that includes email, phone number, or any other contact information that you may have. We need to know the project location, address, and it helps if you let us know where it falls in within the boundary. We need to know the existing conditions of the site. So is it vacant? Does it have an existing building? Does it have multiple buildings? Is it near the waterfront? Is it located on Main Street? All those are helpful. We need to know the project type. So are you new development or redevelopment in that large call for projects, or do you fall in that small project fund? And then we need a summary description. So it really helps if we have a lot of detailed information in this. So we need to know the square footage of your building, if there is one. We need to know the number of floors, and we need to know the acreage of the total property. And we also need to know your identified use. So is this going to be a restaurant? Is it going to be a center for arts? Is it going to be new housing? Is it going to be an addition onto an existing building? And what will that addition be? Property ownership is a big one. We need to know if you as a project sponsor own the property. If you don't own the property and you're looking to do a project on this property, we need to have acknowledgement from the property owner that they are okay with you putting this project forward. That is usually done through a legal agreement. So I highly suggest, if you don't own the property that you're proposing a project on, to get in contact with that property owner ASAP, and then have a legal agreement in writing that you can provide us that says that that property owner will allow you to do the project if you are awarded the funding. We also need a preliminary funding estimate. We have a very nice template for you to identify all of your funding sources in, how much that funding source is, and then where does it come from. The more precise and detailed, the better. So then we don't have to follow up with you and ask exactly which of those funding sources will be allocated to what part of the project. When possible, please cite these sources of estimates. You can use an estimating firm, an engineering firm, or a local architect. And then please provide assumptions and contingencies. As we know, the construction market is very difficult right now with inflation. So we highly suggest you put a contingency in there just in case there's a change order during the project. And then, of course, include that discussion of funding sources, who you applied to, when you applied, and when that funding was awarded from them. I mentioned this prior, but we need to know a little bit about the capacity for the project sponsor. So we need to know if you have experience in implementing or involvement with similar projects. We don't necessarily need all project sponsors to have redeveloped a building before. That is definitely not a qualification. But if you've been involved with the process, if you've been part of steering committees or project teams that have done that, we would like to know that. We need to know if there's any partner entities or organizations that you need to implement this. For an example, we worked on the city of North Tonawanda last year. They had an organization that was actually partnered with the city of North Tonawanda. They were a nonprofit, but the city owned their building. That kind of information is crucial to know. And then we need to know a time frame for implementation and project readiness. what has been completed to date. So have you done site clearance? Have you done engineering and estimating? We also need a detailed timeline with major milestones. So when do you think final design will be done if it's not done yet? When do you think bidding will happen if you're awarded? And then when do you think construction will go into place if awarded? And then discussion of any regulatory challenges such as environmental concerns. Will you have to do a full environmental assessment form? Have you already done a full environmental assessment form? Will you have to go through the state environmental quality review process? If you don't know that information, that's totally fine. That's what we as a consultant team are here to help you with. We need to know about resiliency and if you'll be incorporating resiliency elements. New York State really cares about sustainability and resiliency in these projects because, of course, they take that with them through whatever projects they do, and this is state funding, so they want to make sure that if you're incorporating that, they're aware of it. That can include a variety of things. It can include much more than what's on this slide, but it could include bioswales, a green roof, rain gardens, permeable surfaces. Maybe you want to put in an electric vehicle charging station. Please make sure to note that if you are going to do it. If you're not going to do it, that's okay. Don't put on there that you're doing it just to put it on there. Make sure that you're actually going to implement it if you give us that detail. Some anticipated revitalization benefits. So we want to know, is this creating new jobs or new visitors to the area? Give us your best estimate. It doesn't have to be exact, but will it create a maximum of 10 jobs? Will it create a maximum of 50 visitors per day? Those are helpful things to know. We need to know, is there any environmental aspects of this project? Are you going through a brownfield cleanup? Are you part of the brownfield cleanup program? Have you done a phase 1 environmental site assessment? We need to know if there's any social aspects of this. So is it a gathering space? Are there any health aspects of this? Maybe it's a new clinic. Are there housing aspects to this? If so, what type of housing is it? How many units is it? How large are those units? Is there a historic preservation aspect to this? If so, are you coordinating with a state historic preservation office on your project? And then are there beautification aspects to this? Are there new gardens involved? New sconces on the sides of the building? Are you redoing the curb and the driveway to the building? Those all count as beautification. They should be noted and acknowledged. Some supplemental information that really helps when we're putting your project profiles together for the LPC and the community to review is images of the project site. Now, us as a consultant team, we can go out there and take pictures, but it's super helpful if you provide those right up front, so then we can just implement them into your profile and everyone has an image of what the project looked like. On top of that, it's really helpful if you have renderings of your proposed project. So you can see on the right side of our screen here, this is a rendering of a project in the city of North Tonawanda that was actually awarded funding. They were 211 Main Street. They were redoing this property on the top photo into an office space. On the bottom photo is a rendering of that space. This really helps the project team see what the goal is for the project. It helps the local planning committee see that. It helps the community see that. And then it helps New York State do that. So if you have those, please include them. If you're working on those currently, please note that. And then if you don't have the capacity to do those, please let us know that as well. Also, do you have documentation of project readiness? So are there documents from either the DEC, your local contractor, an architect saying that these are ready to move forward? Or like I mentioned before, do you have letters from grant sources identifying that you can use those funds for this project? I wanted to show this budget table because this is exactly what your budget table will look like if you move forward in the strategic investment plan. As you see there, we have the items identified, what the cost of those items will be, the funding source for those items, and the status of those funds. So you can say pending if you applied for a grant recently and you don't know if it's awarding yet. You can say committed if you know that grant is awarded and it's in the bank, or you can say requested as in the DRI. Oh, one quick note. We also want to know your total funding request for the project. So like I said, you can do up to 40% if you're a private entity, and then the percentage of your total cost, and then the total cost of your project is really important for us to know as well. So we mentioned decarbonization earlier. Like I mentioned, decarbonization was part of the DRI process last year. They further refined it, and now it's part of the DRI process again this year. It's only applicable to new construction, additions, and substantial rehabs. This means that it's over 5,000 square feet of new construction or doesn't involve a building addition of 5,000 square feet or more. So if your project falls into that, you do have to do some type of decarbonization work with the consultant team. You will have to incorporate those decarbonization strategies, and we will facilitate that for you. Department of State is working with NYSERDA and a private consultant team on their end, so that you will work directly one-on-one with them, so they can help you identify what type of decarbonization elements should be included. And they also know that this should not be a burden to you as a project sponsor. So I don't want anyone to worry about, oh no, I have to include decarbonization strategies. This is going to up my project by $100,000 more. What am I going to do? The end goal of these decarbonization strategies is to make sure that it doesn't negatively impact your project and is actually a positive impact in the long run. So like I said, don't worry about this unless you fall into these thresholds right here. And I just want to show an example of a successful DRI project and what it kind of looks like all laid out in that strategic investment plan. So here we show what exactly the project will be. It'll be a professional crossroads building with offices for oral surgery, endodontics, periodontics, and then it goes on to tell what will be done, the installation of an elevator as a satellite office building, development of an external core house to an elevator, stairwell and step for building. So we have all those there. And then we have at the bottom that they support the goals that were identified for the DRI. You can see there it also has total project costs and the requested DRI funding. Also shows a really nice rendering of what the building will look like in the end. So this is an example of a successful DRI project. They gave highly detailed information. They identified how they will help the local community. They gave total project costs and their requested DRI funding, and they provided renderings as well. So the open call for projects is open for 6 weeks. We opened last Friday, it was posted, and we close August 1st at noon. If your project is ready or almost ready, please submit it sooner rather than later. You can email your submission to me, Emma Phillips, and there's my email address, or you can give an in-person submission to the Homer Town Hall Village office. If you do that, we just request that, you print it, staple it nicely, maybe put in an envelope just so it stays safe. They will then scan those and send them to the project team. Following that, the consultant team will compile all the projects, how many ever are submitted. And then at our August LPC meeting, we will review those preliminary project sheets, just a preliminary review. We will then work with all the project sponsors to identify any gaps in their sheets and make sure that we reach out to them and work with them so that we can fill those gaps. So there might be engineering assessments that are missing, cost estimates, market assessments that are missing, so that we're all here as a consultant team to help them fill those, or you to help you fill those gaps. The LPC will then review those revised project sheets. Those projects are presented at the second public workshop, and we will receive feedback from the community on those. And then eventually the LPC will recommend projects to New York State. And then New York State selects a final list of projects for funding in early 2024. So we don't know when funding is actually going to happen. That's all up to New York State. But this strategic investment plan will be submitted in December. And then hopefully shortly after that, New York State will determine what projects fall into the 9.7 million. So we're going to open it up for final questions. And I can always go back to a slide if you missed something, but we'll also be posting this on Homer's DRI website and the recording so that you can view the recording again. You can just use the PowerPoint as a guide when you're filling out your template. But there's my contact information, Daniel Riker, who's my coworker's information, and Lissa's information. Then we have the project form template right there where you can just open it up directly and edit that PDF. And then what I was talking about earlier is that we will be having DRI office hours. Our first ones are next week on Thursday from 10:30 to 12:30. Those will be virtual. And then our next ones will be in person on July 6th, 10:30 to 12:30 at 53 South Main Street in Homer. And then we will alternate between virtual and in person until the open call for projects is over. So attendance at those is not mandatory whatsoever. I know people work during the day and might not be able to make it. If you can't make any office hours, just give me an email and we can work things out and schedule something separately. And we will be posting a flyer on the DRI site with remaining dates and times, so you always know where we are and when we're doing them. So now I'm just going to open it up for any questions that anyone may have, and hopefully we can answer them to the best of our ability.
So Emma, this is Gary. I guess I just want to underscore that. I mean, that's a lot of information, but people, again, with projects can go to the Homer website, access the template, and really begin assembling the project for consideration. And then, of course, the other thing is the availability of your presentation that you just finished.
Yep. So yes, everything will be available. And if someone doesn't have a print, like if they want to print it out and fill it out, we can work with you to print out that template so that you can fill it out at home and then return it back to the Village of Homer. That's no problem at all. Are there any other questions?
Victor, if you were trying to say something, I think you were muted.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Emma. So
Hi.
First, thank you for doing this. And Gary, thank you for attending. So a couple comments, and then I want to just make a brief statement that could be motivating to somebody. So when I look at this, I have a fear that people are going to have a hard time raising the money to complete the projects. Can you just tell us about other places, how that has fallen into place?
Yeah. So sorry, hold on about that. There we go. Yeah. So we worked in North Tonawanda last year, and we had a lot of nonprofits go for funding. As we know, nonprofits do not have a lot of income. And what many of our project sponsors did was work with their local banks to acquire bridge loans. And bridge loans are a totally acceptable form of leveraging funds. So if someone doesn't have the money that's needed in the bank right now, that's completely fine. I also encourage them to look a little more into different types of New York State and federal grants that they can put as pending on their project sponsor or their project template. If they need ideas for that, they're always welcome to reach out to the consultant team. We're here to help those project sponsors identify other sources of funding. But I want to underscore that a project sponsor that already has that funding, either through bridge loan, equity, or other grants, is going to be more competitive automatically. But if a project sponsor does not have that, that doesn't mean they're automatically eliminated or they won't be included on the slate by any means. They'll just have to work to make sure that they have some funding available so that when they're awarded the grant, the project will actually happen.
Okay, good. That's a sensible answer. And I think that people will need that. Second, in looking at the projects that are proposed, I want to make a comment about your vision first. So I was worried about the vision, and I think the vision is really good and straightforward. The state vision, okay? So I think that really points out what would be transformational, what we really should be doing. But when I look at the projects in Homer, almost every one is a project that should be done. You know, the project sponsor has a reason to bring it in, but it's not actually transformational or revitalizing in the way that the state is calling for. So I started thinking about it, and I just thought about some ideas of things in my life that have been really transformational. And it struck me, maybe I should put them in the Homer News. But I want to read you one. I've got 3 or 4 stories I'm going to put together. I want to read you one for a couple minutes about what can happen in upstate New York. So please be patient. I won't be too long. Okay. So this is revitalization story number 1, what you see. Thank you for letting me do this. In 2009, our family took a cruise to Italy and Greece and Turkey. On Iya, a village on a beautiful and famous but very hot Greek island named Santorini, we stopped our hike for an incredibly delicious snack of Greek yogurt and Greek honey. Probably the most delicious, simple snack I've ever eaten. But it never crossed my mind to start a business manufacturing that delicious Greek yogurt. Hamdi Ulukaya, however, saw something different from what I saw. Hamdi Ulukaya was born to a dairy farming Kurdish family in Turkey. His family owned and operated a sheep, goat, and dairy farm where they made cheese and yogurt. The family often led a seasonally semi-nomadic existence, tending and herding their flocks. Seeking a better life for himself, he moved to upstate New York for better education and work opportunities. His larger success came after Ulukaya purchased a large defunct Kraft yogurt family in New Berlin, just over 50 miles from downtown Homer in 2005. Ulukaya financed the purchase within 5 months with a loan from the Small Business Administration plus local business incentive grants. Ulukaya is the owner, founder, chairman, and chief executive of Chobani, the #1 best-selling Greek yogurt brand in the U.S. According to Forbes, his net worth as of October 2022 is US $2.1 billion. In April 2016, Ulukaya announced to his employees that he would be giving them 10% of the shares in Chobani, which may be worth up to $250 million. From an interview with Hamdi, the question: between upstate New York, where Chobani started, and Idaho, where you've expanded, you have intimate relationships with rural America. What do you want others to know about these communities they might be missing? He replied, whatever success we have experienced, I give all the credit to these communities. That's where the magic happens. My story started with a closed factory in a small upstate town. The men and women who I work with at Chobani have a human spirit that is something I cannot put a value on. And I've always said, close your eyes, put your finger on a map, pick a town where you haven't been and go there. Start wherever you are. My question: how did a semi-nomadic Kurdish immigrant from Turkey create more prosperity and net worth in 15 years than the entire population of Cortland County has done in our lifetime? Answering that question will help us recognize and support the next Hamdi Ulukaya. And related to Hamdi Ulukaya, I support the proposed co-working space to encourage people like Hamdi to stay in or return to or migrate to Homer, New York. So the point of that, I think, hopefully you can tell, is just to make people think bigger, not to think about renovating their building, but about what can we do that will actually change things. So is that interesting to you?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. I just want to let you know that I want to reiterate again, just because projects were included in the application doesn't mean they will be either submitted during this open call for projects or in the strategic investment plan. And that vision was just for the application's sake. The vision will be redone through this planning process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Victor, by the way, you may have seen this, but the person that started Chobani has an excellent TED Talk that is worth it. I think everyone should watch it. It's amazing.
I have not seen it. Thank you.
It's brilliant.
And but the only thing for the limited group that we have here is basically with these open call to projects, we should get, if anybody's got a project, bring it forward. If it doesn't fit in the DRI, then we can find perhaps another revenue grant process that would better suit it. So this is really a great opportunity, because even if it doesn't go to the DRI, it can still get funded in other manner.
Yes, 100%. And the DRI is almost like another mini comprehensive plan. And the fact that it's hearing what folks want to see in their community and then trying to make it happen through alternative funding sources if it's not in the DRI area. If it is in the DRI area, and like Victor said, you don't have other funding sources identified, please still apply, because we want to hear what you would like to see and do in the DRI area. And if it doesn't get included in the strategic investment plan on that slate of projects, Department of State and our partners at ESD, Homes and Community Renewal, NYSERDA, and the consultant team will try our best to help you in other avenues.
Great, thank you.
Emma, I should know this, but, were the projects that submitted for the purposes of the application somehow notified of the open call for projects individually, or was it just generally announced? And
It
if they
was
haven't-
generally announced, but, and Tanya's not on the call, it's been running on the radio, it's been in the paper, and it's on our DRI project website. I can certainly try to reach out to those folks that were included in the application. I might not have all their contact information, but Gary, you and I can work on that together if you would like.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just think we can't always rely on the media to get
Media.
the word out. Yeah,
Yes.
so I think a personal nudge is probably going to be worthwhile. Some
Agreed.
of those projects, as you said numerous times, may drop off. We don't know.
Right,
Silence isn't going to give us any.
agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you again so much for coming. We really appreciate it. We love this opportunity to just explain this process a little more. We know it's a lot of information at once. I try to keep it as concise but detailed as possible. Like I said, if you have any questions at all, please email me. I'm happy to respond at any time during working hours. And you can always come to office hours. We would love to see you there. It's our job to help you. And we're excited about the potential projects in Homer. So thank you again.
Thank you, Emma.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Emma.
Bye.